there's spotty repairs, there's shattered pieces, you've got broken solder joints through metal fatigue in some of these places near the solder joints.
Is that a repair right there?
There are some weird, it can be hard to tell with these very trippy windows. Like here, you got this sort of thing. This globbiness looks like an in situ repair. Some of the oxidation you see is from corrosion in the solder, from the original flux, which is not agreeing with the metal. So the kind of button here, we have a break here and here, so you can see this buckling. This is a hinge point, so eventually the window will continue to buckle along this fault line.
It already is out of plane a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that what they do when the glass breaks? They just solder it?
They can, yeah. And, soldering vertically is no.
Well, I'm noticing like these that aren't on the other windows.
Let's see if this might be. No, it's not. So this was actually glazed together like this. But I mean, in this piece, this is original, and I think that, like we were talking about, they cut this and glazed them together to make it seem more medieval looking. They would do these sort of artificial repairs. You'll see it.
How do you know that it's not?
Figure.
How do you know it's one piece of glass and not
Well, you can
broken?
tell by the grain.
Yes.
But couldn't they have taken that broken piece and created a lead?
They could, but that would have meant that at some point this came out, and then had work done to
You
it.
couldn't have done it in place?
Not really. No,
Really?
not really, because there's no way to get in there. So to take this panel out just to do this would have been. Someone might have done it, but it would have been a.
Is that what you would do here?
Weird.
Or with that?
Well, no. See, nowadays, in the old days, that's what. Not only would they do it here, but they would do it in place. They would do it vertically. They would solder here and here, and they would stuff it with grout and hope for the best. It's called a Dutchman. Whereas now they actually have epoxy. As long as none of this is lost, they have epoxy where we can glue this together, and you won't even see the crack.
Okay.
On some types of glass you will, but on opalescent glass like this, you won't see it.
Okay.
What else is making this window showing its age? I'm seeing some kind of distortion over on that side.
Yep, you see the dried putty here. You've seen the channel here. There's virtually no putty left at all.
Well, I see lead, but what's the putty between the lead?
The putty is between the lead and the glass. The lead, the cam is shaped like a girder, and it's that space within that capital I that you have to stuff by hand with grout, like we were looking at in the photo you showed me. That's what he's doing.
Okay.
Is he's putting in this gray.
I didn't realize
material.
there was a material between the lead and the glass.
Yeah, there has to be, because if this wasn't grouted, it would.
And
leak
putty,
water in the rain.
window putty.
Well, we use something called Wonder Putty now, which is an oil-based compound. We used to use a DAP product that isn't.
But 100 years ago, I mean, it's supposed to last.
No,
a
they
long
used
time.
whiting and linseed oil, and they made their own.
It technically isn't supposed to dry. It's only supposed to.
It is not. It's never completely dry.
Yeah.
That's right.
Even after all the baking and all the
Yeah,
heat changes that go through.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you recommend that this leaded glass unit right here is a candidate for what type of repair, from nothing all the way up to the full removal and disassembly of all the glass and then the reassembly of it? Is there anything?
We would disassemble the entire thing.
Okay.
We would keep pieces like this intact together, and we not only we clean all the glass by hand, but a piece like this we clean each shard by hand, and then reassemble it and glue it. In a piece like this, well, this is actually an original. Like I said, this is an original phenomenon here. So we would glaze this back together like this. We wouldn't glue this.
Because that's the way it was.
That's the way it was, and if we did, the piece would become too small.
Yep.
The ones we glue are the ones where you have a real Dutchman.
Sure.
A Dutchman means I can pull this away.
Okay.
Okay? And then we clean each piece, reassemble the whole thing with new cane. The way we build this grid is a little bit different, and we would probably use more reinforcing than they did. There are rebar, we call them rebars, or support bars on the inside, and I would probably put one or two more than they originally had on the inside.
Okay. What little design? That's the writing from the inside.
Now there's dedication plates
Yeah.
painted here, and
Okay.
the paint, the ones I've seen, the paint has failed.
Okay.
And the paint fails for a number of reasons. And when it does fail, there's a spectrum of approaches to dealing with it. But from a conservational perspective, the most approved approach is to leave it pretty much alone. So I'm not going to paint on this piece of original glass for sure. I could plate it with the same font And that would give you a kind of a parallax problem that would look bizarre and would be quite the thing.
But you wouldn't make it any worse by doing the work you did. You wouldn't,
No,
yeah.
because the good question,
Yeah.
because we pull this out dry,
Okay.
and we handle it dry. It never does get wet. And
Whereas the rest of the window, you have a wet part of the process.
we do, so we would pull these out first. We
Okay.
pull these out, we set the panel aside, we set this aside, and then we soak the rest of it. So the rest of it is all dismantled underwater.
Why?
So the bath of water catches all of this material and all the oxidation which is on the surface of the lead, which you don't want to breathe. So it's done underwater to keep the dust down.
You guys have to learn how to work through the refraction of light through water.
We figured it out.
Special glasses.
Could you clear cut that paint on there?
Well,
stabilize
that's a very controversial topic, you know. And there is actually there's something called B72, which is a chemical that people use for that, but it's contentious right now in the glass conservation world because there's no proof that it doesn't yellow. There's no proof that it doesn't fail, and when it does fail, it would take the paint with it.
Right.
So Connie and I were reading articles, poring over articles, because this is a big topic at St. Boniface, which is an amazing church in the Tenderloin, if you ever get a chance to walk through there.
Boniface.
St. Boniface is right, it's like ground zero in the Tenderloin. Jones and Jones
Oh, yeah.
and Taylor or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
No, Jones and Leavenworth, I'm not sure. It's down there. And it has amazingly beautifully painted figurative windows with the paint that is just completely leprous. Like they look like ghosts. And so, you know, the church doesn't want to spend money, but the parish wants them to look the way they used to, but they're historically relevant. So from a conservational perspective, you can't tamper with the paint. And, you know, and if you do tamper with it, how do you do it? So that's where this came up. But in this case, I think we would probably opt to leave it alone, unless the church, for example, in some cases, a family from the parish will decide to fund some of this work. And if they do, I would replace this with the same font, the same design, but with the name of the new family. It's cheating a little bit, but the church is the client, and if it's
Have you seen it done at other churches?
I've seen it done at other churches.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of.
When I've done it, I don't think I've actually replaced a plate to do it. I've done it somewhere else. But
It's actually kind of a nice gesture because life does move on and it does evolve.
you
Right.
meet parishes where they have these names.
is-
They have families' names. No one knows who they are. No one's known them. The elder of the family perished in World War II, and their name is still there. And then in many cases, the church, still respects their memory and doesn't want to tamper with it. In other cases, they say, "Who are these people?"
Well, wouldn't you take all those and maybe put them somewhere as
They've done
another
that.
memorial
Yeah,
of those?
No, this wouldn't get tossed in the dumpster. This would get passed off to the
Yeah.
a church like this will have an archivist, and they keep stuff like that.
Okay.
The other
Awesome. Well,
element-
that's
the
pretty
other
much
element is
that.
is the upper sash that you should talk
The upper
about.
sash is the whole thing.
Yeah.
They have HVAC in here now, it sounds like. So we're rendering these transoms obsolete or redundant. But they do work or can work from a cord on the inside. They louver open for ventilation. One option is to rebuild these and just stick them in, which is a fine approach. Happens all the time.
We don't need operable windows
You
up
don't need
there.
operable windows.
And as you can tell, most of them are never shut fully, and then they start
Very
weathering
often. Because every
differently.
time they get
Yeah.
painted, they shut less and less, and that goes on for 60, 70 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or 100.
But the other element is the glass itself, because
Well, that's what I was selling
Right.
Ed
Oh, you
on.
were.
Probably
Okay.
shouldn't have,
Oh,
because
all right, okay.
it seemed a little overwhelming.
Oh,
But
was it? Okay, all
I would pitch for a new approach to all of these transoms. I think they're unsightly. They don't add to the they add
Tell me
nothing
about
to
the glass
architecture.
inside those transoms. What?
It's a pretty pukey opalescent, greenish purple. It is the same glass.
it's trying.
or it's
I
similar
don't
to
think it is the
glass you
same
have here.
glass. No.
It looks a little rippled, more textured
It's
to
got more
me.
texture. It's
Yeah.
not the same color. If you go to the inside, I don't think.
This,
it's the
when you
color.
look at the inside, there's very little resonance
Yeah.
between the glass
Yeah.
down here and this. So my suggestion would be that with this color palette, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all these are relatively available, we can create a design that is sympathetic to this one in the transoms above, and then
Right.
the quality
and also
of
the
light,
size of the caming and
the size of the cane,
and,
yeah,
the, and,
exactly.
and the way the cames don't line up right now.
Right.
I mean,
You've
except
got
for the
this-
middle one.
This
Right?
big 3/8
Right.
flat, and down here you've
Right.
got 3/16 round.
Yeah.
It's not the same,
Makes total sense.
Yeah, I think that would be a really.
You mentioned over here on the tower, you would prefer to flip the two panes so the lower pane was on the top.
It is an option to
Yeah.
remove the mullion between the bottom and the top.
Right.
The bottommost panel has that Moorish arch to it, which is customarily found in the top. I don't know what they're doing in the bottom. So we would certainly
There's only 3 of those.
restore and retain
Right.
the bottom panels, but they would be conjoined with a new panel, which would go underneath it, which would have the same design and the same color palette, and it would be a single, slender, vertical design.
Yeah.
And it would look
I think
more
making
original
that
and less
one
piecemeal.
opening would also just really be a nice.
Yeah, it would be a very nice.
Is it that maybe they were just the plain ones originally, and then, like you said, somebody finally donated some money, but they just decided to put it in the lower section or something? I mean, why would they have ever started it like that?
It's hard to know. It's hard to
Yeah.
know.
hard to know.
Okay.
When you see them up close, you'll see that there's so many different types of glass in those top. Like none of them are quite the same. You know, so it's kind of a Frankenstein
Yeah.
arrangement up
Right.
in there.
And now that we're on it, I mean, the ones above are.
Those are even sort
are
of
even-
less, or the cracked one on the right.
Well,
I can
mean,
see.
it's just what was the intention there, you know? I mean, that certainly completely horrible right now, you know, because it's so dark. It really looks like a boarded up window. It doesn't look like a window.
You don't even notice them. It looks like
Yeah.
abandoned.
I feel
Yeah.
like when the church was built, they added those to create a cheap source of light.
Into that room.
Yeah,
into
the
that
tower
room.
probably had no electricity in
Right,
1906.
yeah, right.
I mean, the building would have,
Yeah.
but not necessarily the tower.
Yeah.
So it was free work light,
Right.
basically.
Right.
But now, you know, in today's world, it's sort of a lost opportunity. That could be an architectural element that it isn't right now.
And there's 12 of those individual sections, because there's 4 sides to
There's
the
4
bell tower
sides.
in that
Yeah.
configuration,
Yeah.
and so there you go. Okay, all
And
right.
those are simple. I mean, so
Right.
again, it's just a matter of.
So there's an option to maybe do something with those 12 to reconfigure that, and then also to figure out something to do, if possible, or they could all just go back in the way it is.
They can all go back in the way they are.
Okay. I think that presentation we were talking about.